You think you know what this show is about? 6 seconds into one final round, so did Steve Harvey. And then a man said something that changed everything he thought he knew. 6 seconds is not very long. It is long enough to read one sentence, long enough to take one breath and let it out slowly, long enough on the afternoon of March 4th, 2021, for a 57-year-old man named Walter Grimes to say 11 words that stopped a game show in its tracks and held an entire television studio so still that the floor director later said she could hear the lights humming. The 11 words were not planned. Walter Grimes had not rehearsed them. He had not written them down in the hotel room the night before, or said them aloud in the car on the way to the studio, or thought to himself, as he stood at the podium in the Vanderbilt blue shirt his daughter had picked out for him, that today would be the day he finally said them out loud. He had been carrying them for 22 years. They had been in him the way things are in people when they are not ready to come out yet. Not buried exactly, not hidden exactly, just waiting at a depth where daily life does not normally reach. The final round had started. The board was lit. Steve Harvey had read the question. Name something people do to calm themselves down when they're anxious. And the Grimes family at the left podium had buzzed first. And the answer was valid, and the points were on the board, and the game was moving at its normal pace. 6 seconds in. Everything was normal. And then Walter Grimes put down the buzzer. Not dramatically. He set it on the podium edge the way you set something down when your hands need to be free for something else. He turned to Steve Harvey. He said in a voice that was not loud and was not soft, but was very, very steady. Can I say something that has nothing to do with the game? Steve Harvey looked at him. The floor director looked up from her clipboard. The audience, which had been the warm and animated audience that Family Feud cultivates, ready to laugh, ready to clap, ready to play along, went quiet in the particular way that audiences go quiet when they sense that the next thing they are about to hear is going to matter. Steve said, "Go ahead." And Walter Grimes said, "I need to tell my son something." He turned. He looked at the young man standing at the podium next to him. His son's name was Deshaun. He was 26 years old. He was wearing a Vanderbilt blue shirt that matched his father's, which his sister Keely had coordinated because she believed deeply in family aesthetics and had spent 40 minutes in the hotel room the previous evening making sure everyone's collars were right. Deshaun was looking at his father with an expression that had not yet decided what it was. Walter said, "I haven't been a good father to you." The studio fell completely silent. Not a shift, not a murmur. Complete silence. The kind that has weight and texture. The kind that you can feel on your skin. He said, "I was gone for too many of your years." He said, "I know you've forgiven me because you're here and because you're the man you are, which is a better man than I was at your age, and I know that's not from me." He said, "But I have never looked at you in front of other people and said, 'I am sorry for the years I wasn't there.'" He said, "I'm saying it now." He said, "I am sorry. I am proud of you, and I love you, and I should have said all three of those things out loud a long time ago." Deshaun Grimes was 26 years old, and he had his father's jawline and his mother's eyes, and he had grown up in Atlanta, Georgia, largely without Walter, who had left when Deshaun was 4 and come back partially when Deshaun was 12, and come back more fully when Deshaun was 19 and Walter had stopped drinking, which had been the real reason for leaving in the first place, and the reason nobody in the family discussed at volume. He had built something with his father in the 7 years since, not the childhood, which was gone, but something real and present and ongoing, something that had required both of them to decide to build it and keep building it even when the building was uncomfortable. He had thought he had made peace with the missing years. He had told a therapist that he had made peace with the missing years. He was standing at a game show podium in a blue shirt, and his father was looking at him, and he realized he had not quite made peace. Not the last inch of it. Something had still been waiting. He crossed the 18 inches between them and put his arms around his father. Walter Grimes put his arms around his son and held on. The studio fell completely silent, and in the silence, several things happened at once. Keely, 24, standing on the other side of her father, covered her mouth with both hands. Walter's mother, Iris, 79, who was at the end of the podium and who had watched her son leave a family and come back and rebuild with the long-suffering clarity of a woman who prays without stopping and waits without complaining. Iris put one hand on the podium to steady herself and looked at the ceiling briefly, the way people look at ceilings when they are thanking someone who isn't in the room. Walter's sister Pamela, 53, who had driven from Birmingham and who had been the one who told Walter on a Tuesday night in 2014 that his son was growing up, and growing up without him, and that he needed to choose. Pamela turned to the audience with tears running down her face and made no attempt to stop them. The opposing family, the Nguyen family from Houston at the right podium, had gone completely still. The mother, Lynn, 51, had her hand pressed flat on her eldest daughter's arm. The father, Min, 54, was looking at his own son, who was 23, and the 23-year-old was looking back at his father, and something was happening between them that was not the game, and not about the game, and would take a while to surface. Steve Harvey had not moved. He had been standing at the center of the stage when Walter spoke, and he had stayed exactly where he was, and he was still there, and his face was not doing the thing it did when he was performing a reaction. It was doing the thing that faces do, when something reaches in past the professional layer and touches the actual person underneath. A camera operator named Marcus said later that he had worked on the show for 6 years, and he had learned to read Steve Harvey's face on camera, and that what he saw in the 30 seconds after Walter spoke was something he had not seen before. He said, "It wasn't emotion exactly. It was recognition. Like Steve had heard something he already knew from the inside." Steve walked to the podium slowly. He stood next to Walter and Deshawn, who were still holding on. He waited. He did not speak. He did not gesture to the audience or the camera. He simply stood next to them the way a person stands next to something that is happening and does not need to be managed or announced. When they separated, Steve put his hand on Walter's shoulder. He looked at him for a long moment. He said, "Say that one more time." Walter looked at him. He understood. He turned back to Deshawn. He said, slower this time, with the full weight of a man who has been running from something for 22 years and has just decided to stop. "I am sorry. I am proud of you, and I love you." Deshawn said, very quietly, "I know, Dad." He said, "I know." The studio fell completely silent. Steve turned to the audience. He was not composing himself. He had decided not to compose himself, which is a different thing, a harder thing, and the audience could see the difference. He said, "I'm going to tell you something I don't talk about on this show." He said, "I grew up without a father present. Not gone the way Walter was gone, but absent in the ways that matter." He said, "Nobody said those 3 things to me the way Walter just said them." He said, "And I want you to understand what it means for a son to hear them." He looked at Deshawn. He said, "It means everything. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how long it's been. It means everything every single time." There was no applause. The audience was past applause. A woman in the third row was crying silently into a tissue she had found in her purse. A man in the sixth row had his elbow on his knee and his hand over his eyes. Harriet, the same retired schoolteacher from Macon who had been in the audience for another taping years earlier and had sensed something unusual before she could name it, was not at this taping. But the woman sitting in her approximate seat was doing the same thing Harriet had done. She had stopped talking mid-sentence and was just watching, and would not be able to explain why, later, to the person she had come with. But Steve wasn't done. He turned to the camera. He said, "I want to talk to everyone watching at home." He said, "There is a conversation that has not happened yet between you and someone you love. You know which one." He said, "You have been waiting for the right time or the right words or the right version of yourself that feels worthy of saying the thing out loud." He said, "Walter Grimes said it at a game show podium 6 seconds into the final round because the years ran out and he decided the years running out was the right time." He said, "The years are running out for all of us." He said, "The right time is whenever you are standing in front of the person and you still have the ability to speak." He said, "Use it." He stopped. He said, "Let's finish the game." The audience laughed, not because it was funny, but because the human body needs a release valve sometimes, and laughter is the one that fits in the most situations. And the laughter was warm and grateful, and it brought the room back from wherever it had gone. Steve smiled. Walter smiled. Deshaun wiped his face with the back of his hand and picked up the buzzer. The Grimes family lost the final round by 31 points. They were not close. The Nguyen's played well and deserved to win, and went on to the fast money round, and Min Nguyen, the father who had looked at his 23-year-old son during the silence, won $22,000 for his family, and when he came off the stage, he went directly to his son, without being prompted, without the cameras being specifically trained on him, and said something quietly that his son nodded at, and they briefly gripped each other's arms in the way men grip each other's arms when words are insufficient, which they sometimes are. The production team posted the clip on a Thursday. 27 million views by Saturday morning. 63 million by the following Friday. It was shared by 17 parenting publications, 4 veterans support organizations. Because something about Walter's particular combination of absence and return resonated with families navigating deployment and reunion. And one grief counseling nonprofit that wrote in their newsletter that the clip was the most precise illustration they had encountered of what therapists call a corrective emotional experience. The comments ran deep. A man in Phoenix wrote, "I have not spoken to my father in 9 years. I'm calling him. I don't know what I'll say. I'm calling him." A woman in Dublin wrote, "My son doesn't know I'm proud of him because I don't know how to say it without crying. I'm going to try crying." A teenager in Cape Town wrote, "My dad saw this and texted me 3 words. That's all. Just 3 words. I'm keeping the text forever." 3 months after the taping, Walter and Deshaun Grimes drove together from Atlanta to Macon to watch Deshaun's recreational league basketball team play a Saturday game. It was not a significant event. It was a Saturday. Walter sat in the bleachers with a cup of bad coffee and watched his son run a full-court press, and yelled encouragement that was largely ignored. And Deshaun rolled his eyes twice at his father in the way that grown children roll their eyes at parents who have become, gradually and with effort, safe enough to roll eyes at. Walter counted the eye rolls on the way home and told his mother about them on the phone. Iris said, "That's how you know it's working." Walter said, "I know, Mama." A year after the taping, Deshaun Grimes gave a short interview to an Atlanta lifestyle publication that was doing a feature on the clip's ongoing resonance. He said 3 things that were widely shared in the following weeks. He said, I don't think I realized how much I needed to hear it out loud until I heard it out loud. He said, "The therapist was great, and the work we did was real, and I thought I was done. But there's something about the actual words and the actual air between you and the actual person that the therapy can prepare you for but cannot replace." He said, "My father is not a different person because of that day. He was already becoming that person. That day was just when I got to witness it publicly. And something about the public part mattered. Something about the room full of strangers knowing he meant it made it more real." He said, "I think he needed witnesses." He said, "I think I did too." Today, Walter Grimes is 4 years sober. He works as a mentor with a recovery program in Atlanta that pairs men in early sobriety with sponsors who have been where they are. And he has been told by the program director that he is one of the most effective mentors they have because he does not soften what the missing years cost. He tells the men he works with exactly what it cost. He tells them the game show story, which most of them have already seen, because 63 million people shared it. He tells them the part that isn't in the clip, that the night before the taping, alone in the hotel room while his family slept, he had sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands for a long time and thought about the 4-year-old he had left, and the 26-year-old who had shown up anyway, in a matching blue shirt, and had not been able to find words for the distance between those two facts. He tells them, "I found the words the next day, 6 seconds into the final round." He tells them, "Find yours before the buzzer." Keely Grimes, 27, has a framed still from the clip on the wall of her apartment in Atlanta. It is not the moment of the embrace. It is a frame from 3 seconds before. Walter, mid-sentence, looking at Deshawn with the expression of a man who has decided to say the thing. She says she put it there because that is the moment she returns to when she needs to do something difficult. Not the after, the during, the face of a person who has decided. There is a particular kind of courage that does not look like courage from the outside because it is so still. It does not raise its voice. It does not announce itself. It simply puts down the buzzer and turns and speaks. Walter Grimes had 22 years of weight behind 11 words, and he said them on a Thursday afternoon in a television studio with a live audience and a camera operator named Marcus, and a floor director who could hear the lights humming, and the saying of them did not undo the years. It never does. The years are what they are, and the people who lived inside them carry what they carry. And no sentence said at a game show podium reverses time. But the saying of them moved something forward that had been stopped. It opened a door that had been shut not by anger exactly, and not by distance exactly, but by the accumulated silence of years in which the thing was true but unspoken, present but unwitnessed, real but unreceived. And Deshawn Grimes, 26, stood on the other side of that door in a blue shirt and stepped through it. And that is not a small thing. That is not a television moment. That is a life, adjusting. That is 2 people choosing the rest of it. 6 seconds, 11 words. 1 door, finally open. If this reached you somewhere real, hit the like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because every week there is a story like this one, and you deserve to be here for it. And share this with the person you have been meaning to say the thing to. Not in a month, not when you find the words. Now. Walter found his 6 seconds into the final round. You don't need more time than that.